call this meeting of the Plan Commission to order. Madam Clerk, I have a roll call.
Mr. Petrie, Ms. Bindum, Mr. Fell,
Here.
Mr. Fitch,
Here.
Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Otto,
Here.
Ms. Stake,
Here.
Mr. Trail.
We do have a quorum. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we'd like to request that we move number 7, new public hearings, up to be right after number 5.
Are there any objections to that, Commissioners? We'll change the agenda then and move the item number 7, new public hearings, to commence before we get into old business of the update to the Plan Commission's bylaws. Do we have any communications?
There was a communication in your packet that was mailed out, and it was an email version was forwarded to the Plan Commission as well, from Carol McCusick regarding wanting to set a specific time to consider bylaws annually.
Correct. It's for a proposal to have a bracketed period of time designated from April through June in which the bylaws would be considered. A number of other procedural requirements involved, limiting who can speak when and how they're ultimately to be approved. We don't have any continued public hearings, so let's call to open plan case. You want me to open these at the same time? Or should we consider these sequentially?
There's the approval of the minutes.
Oh, the approval of the minutes. I blew right over that one.
Yep.
See what happens, Jeff. Returning back to approval of the minutes. Do we have any motions on the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Stake. Move for approval.
Yes.
Seconded by Ms. Bindum. Are there any changes? I did have 2 typos if nobody else has anything.
You have some.
Yes, at the bottom of page 9, the last sentence looks like it has a double negative. Mr. Trail stated he did not feel that the Plan Commission could not legally compel an answer from a petitioner. So I think that's the second "not" needs to be stricken. It's the second word on the last line. And then I think that similarly, the second word in the next line, which is the first line on page 10, Mr. Fitch added that he had never seen a petitioner never want to answer a question that someone had asked, and I think that needs to be changed to the word "not." It's kind of nitpicky, but. Okay. Any other changes to the minutes? That said, we'll do it by voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Those in favor, those opposed? The minutes pass. Okay, now getting back to the order of business, we don't have any continued public hearings. So now we've moved new public hearings above old business. So should I open these at the same time, or should I open them?
Yes, you could open them both.
Okay, I'll open simultaneously Plan Case 2014-A06, Annexation Agreement for a 5.19-acre tract of property north of Perkins Road and east of Cooks Lane. Plan Case 2245-M14, a request by Harold Whitlatch and Teresa Westenhaver to rezone a 5.19-acre tract of property north of Perkins Road, east of Cooks Lane, from Champaign County CR Conservation Recreation to City AG Agriculture upon annexation. Mr. Garcia.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Yes. So as you just said, this is a request to enter into an annexation agreement for a approximately 5.2 acre parcel on Perkins Road and Cooks Lane, which will be called 1702 Cooks Lane once the house is built there. And the property is currently not contiguous to the city. If you look at Exhibit A, you can see where the property is and the city limits. It's still a little outside the city limits. However, it is within 200 feet of the nearest sanitary sewer connection, which is right at the corner of Perkins Road and Cooks Lane. And subject to the Urbana Subdivision and Development Code, as well as state regulations, if a development is to occur that's on a property within 200 feet of the nearest sanitary sewer connection, that property must connect to the sanitary sewer. Now, the city also has an agreement with the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District that anytime a new permit is issued for a connection for any property that's within the extraterritorial jurisdiction, those property owners must enter into an annexation agreement with the city. So that's what prompted this annexation agreement process to begin. Now, the Plan Commission's role in this, you normally don't see, or you don't hear every annexation agreement case that comes forward. But as part of this annexation agreement, there would be a requested rezoning from County CR, which is Conservation Recreation, to City AG, which is Agriculture. And since that rezoning is happening, that's why it's coming to the Plan Commission. Now, we do feel that there are some benefits of bringing of entering into the annexation agreement for the city and for the petitioners. For the city, there's the potential for future tax revenues if the parcel is ever brought into the city. And part of the annexation agreement states that the city building codes will be met, which is a benefit as well. Also, the ability for the owners to connect to the sanitary sewer, we feel, is beneficial to the owners and to the city as well. With respect to zoning, the way that we usually do annexation agreements is we consult Table 4-1 of the zoning ordinance, which is a table of uses, and we would we have a direct conversion, and in this case, it would convert from county conservation recreation to city conservation recreation education, except in this case the property owners want to put a single family home on the use. That's why they bought the property, and the direct conversion into the CRE district would not allow a single family home on the property. So the city and the property owners feel that the most appropriate rezoning would be city ag upon annexation. Now, historically, the property has been used for agriculture and open space. But as I said, the applicants have submitted plans to build a single-family home for the site that will comply with all the city building codes. They also plan to erect at least one or two accessory structures, and they may raise some small farm animals such as peacocks and rabbits. And they might produce some hay or corn on the southern part of the site for supplemental income. And all of these intended uses are or would be allowed by right in the agriculture district. And as I said before, the single family use would not be allowed in the CRE district, hence the rezoning. All of the adjacent properties, if you look at Exhibit C, you'll see that the future land use for all of the properties surrounding this is rural residential. And in the comprehensive plan, And rural residential is intended primarily for single-family residential development in areas with unique natural features. That is commonly in areas behind or beyond the corporate limits, which is where this is, and typically on larger lots. And we feel that the use or the zoning as agriculture would also be consistent with the surrounding land uses, which are mostly residential, vacant, and agricultural. Now, whenever we do a rezoning, we rely on what are called the LaSalle criteria, which came out of an Illinois Supreme Court case that developed these criteria to evaluate the zoning. So I'm just going to run through these quickly for the property. So the first criteria is that the existing land uses and zoning, or is to evaluate the rezoning with respect to the existing land uses and zoning of the nearby property. As I just mentioned, it fits in with the surrounding zoning and land uses. Second criteria is the extent to which property values are diminished by the restrictions of the ordinance. As I mentioned, if we were to do a direct conversion from county conservation recreation into city conservation recreation education, it would diminish the value of the property because the CRE designation does not allow for single-use residential, and our long-range plan does say that this area should be rural residential. So we feel that that's an appropriate use for the area, or for the property. Criteria 3 is the extent to which the ordinance promotes the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public. And criteria 4 is that the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed on the individual property owner should also be factored in. So we don't, with respect to number 3, we don't feel that the rezoning would jeopardize the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public. We also feel that connecting to the sanitary sewer would actually be beneficial for public health, especially if neighboring property owners further up on Cooks Lane, once the sewers are extended, if they choose to go off of septic and hook into the sanitary sewers, that could be especially beneficial to public health. Criteria 5 is to evaluate the suitability of the subject property for the zoned purposes. Really, the agriculture zoning designation is the only one in the city that most closely reflects what the intended uses are for the property. So we feel that it's quite suitable. And criteria 6 is that the length of time the property has been vacant as zoned, considered in the context of land development in the area and in the vicinity of the subject property. The property has been vacant for quite some time. It has been used for agricultural uses in the past, and we feel that the most appropriate types of development for the property would be low-intensity agricultural and residential uses, and that's exactly what's being proposed here. If anything, we're holding back development, it would probably be this requirement to connect to the sanitary sewer. But in this case, the applicants are willing to do that. So there are a few options you have in this case. The first is that you can approve the proposed annexation amendment, including the rezoning to agriculture. You could approve the annexation agreement with the rezoning to agriculture with recommended changes, or you could deny the proposed annexation agreement, and staff recommends that the Plan Commission recommend approval to the City Council for the proposed annexation agreement. And that concludes my presentation, and I can field any questions you have. The applicants are also here if you have more specific questions for them.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Garcia?
Well, can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we need residential, and I don't know why we have to have agriculture with residential. Because I don't think it fits very well.
Well, so the current county zoning of conservation recreation allows for agricultural uses. This parcel is decent sized. It's 5 acres. The applicants purchased the property intending to use it for their home, but also for doing some small scale agricultural raising of fowl and such.
But we don't know for sure what they're going to use it for. We don't know what's going to go on to that. Within a residential area there, I don't think,
Well,
that's
so the
very reasonable.
area, it's low density residential around there, as well as some agricultural uses. It's quite rural in its use as it is. We had discussed with the applicants whether it should be R1 residential, but that wouldn't allow any sort of agricultural uses that would allow them to raise some animals on a small scale. I think the issue that we have is that in our comp plan, we call this area rural residential. We think that the proposed uses of the applicants would fit into rural residential. Unfortunately, we have not created a rural residential zone. So what we're trying to do as staff is figure out what current zones we have most closely fit with rural residential, and we feel that it would be the agricultural use. In annexation agreements, we could be more specific in what types of agricultural uses we would allow there. So you could say something like no large-scale hog farm or something like that, which the applicants are not intending to do. But if you wanted to build in a little more, something a little more specific, I suppose you could.
I think we should know what agriculture you would be working on. You say that it's, small, but we don't have any answer to that, of what's that means, and rural residential is good, but I also don't want to have people not going there because of what's happening to the area. I think lots of times we've been doing some things for residential that has ruined residential areas, and I don't want this residential area to be ruined. So I think it has
Are you asking a question, Ms.
Yeah,
Fink?
yeah. I'm asking whether they could do something to let us know what they're really talking about.
We'll ask the petitioner if they want to speak to us in a minute.
Because it's, I grew up on the farm, so I know a lot about it.
So we could have the petitioners come up and answer questions
We
now,
will.
or if you.
Sure, we'll invite them up.
Okay.
Mr. Otto?
On page 2, on the AG Agriculture District, it's not a complete sentence. It says it's intended to retain agriculture and other compatible low-intensity uses, areas where soil and topographical conditions are suitable for these uses and into which the intrusion of urban uses would be inappropriate or untimely due to lack of urban services and facilities. Can you read from the zoning code precisely, because, I think Illinois has a right to farm legislation, and does our zoning supersede that? So the Farm Bureau and other organizations have been concerned that cities not inhibit their right to have confinement agriculture. And, quite apart from the immediate intentions, once we zone something, it's zone that. So could you read, what are the types in an urban agricultural zone? What are the restrictions on the activities?
Actually, Mr. Otto, I was just thumbing through the table of uses, some of which are enumerated there, and it's maybe in discussion we can get into that more. I can share this with you if you want. There's a whole range of things. You're exactly right, that regardless of the immediate intention, and I think Bernadine was kind of talking along these lines as well. There's a range of different activities such as cropping, general ag, commercial breeding, farm equipment sales and service, and these are all by right. Plant nursery or greenhouse, roadside produce sales stand, elementary or junior high school, probably unlikely, but
Yeah.
but anyway, maybe we can flesh those out a little more.
I think I'd like to hear that in the record so everyone can hear it to understand really what
we're
could
talking
happen
about.
there,
Yeah,
not what is intended to happen by the current owners, but
ultimately, yeah.
by right, once we
Sure.
put that designation on it.
I think that's a good point. Mr. Fell.
Do we have any other examples in the city where we've annexed a little island that's outside the city limits?
So, just for just clarification, this is an annexation agreement, and what that says is that if the city boundaries ever go and abut that property, then they will have to annex into the city. It might never happen. This is an agreement that will run for 20 years. So if within 20 years the municipal boundaries go and touch that property boundary, then they would annex in.
Okay.
But the actual when you want to be annexed in, you have to go through the process of you have to have a petition for annexation. So this is this is a different thing.
Is there, if we disregard the farming aspect of this application, is there anything we can rezone this property to that will allow them to build a house now without the annexation agreement?
No. So they have to enter into an annexation agreement because of the rules that we have with the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District that says if you're getting a new permit to hook into the sanitary sewer system and you're within the ETJ, you have to enter into an annexation agreement with the city.
Okay. I don't know if I'll find it offhand here, but the parcel where they want to build their house is on the north end of this. They subdivide it and take the house, the property that the house is going to be on beyond 200 feet. They could build the house without an annexation agreement.
I don't believe that's the case because so during the course of this annexation agreement, we were asking some questions about that requirement of 200 feet, and we found out that the state requirement is actually more restrictive than our local requirement, and the state the state requires a connection if the property is within 300 feet. So we're probably going to have to amend our subdivision ordinance to reflect the current state statute, and I don't think on this property they would be able to subdivide and build outside of that 300 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, just to further explain that, the act of subdivision would also require them to extend the sewer to the property line.
Isn't the property big enough they could subdivide it without being a subdivision?
Well, yeah,
Okay. And the last question is, even with 5 acres, it seems like an agricultural use on this is not going to take up the majority of the 5 acres, probably. So when does something cease to be a garden and become a farm?
Well, I believe in our zoning ordinance we say that the smallest farm you can have would be 5 acres.
What's the biggest garden you can have?
Less than 5 acres. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
we would consider this a primarily residential use, and we are considering all the agricultural or quasi-agricultural uses they're discussing to be accessories to that.
Okay, if it's a big garden, can't it just be just the opposite of that?
Maybe.
Mr. Otto?
I mean, I think these questions are interesting. So if they were R1 and they had a big garden plot and sold some sweet corn off of it, would that be in violation of R1?
So in R1, the only types of agricultural uses you can do would be cropping, and they would like to have some livestock, but I don't think livestock is the right word, because they're just talking about having peacocks, perhaps having a couple of horses. It's not, which I think is allowed in this, would be allowed in the city anyway, but it's that. It's the non-cropping uses that gave us pause as to thinking that R1 would be appropriate zoning. I will also point out just that if the zoning were converted directly from county CR to city CRE, it would allow all agricultural uses, general agriculture, cropping stuff, and livestock raising. So really, if you think about it that way, it's like we're allowing what should be allowed on the site if it were a direct conversion, and that would just go straight to the city council. But they really want to build their home on the site. Unfortunately, our CRE doesn't allow the home, so we're trying to find a way to allow that. And like Jeff said, that is the primary use.
Any further questions,
One more.
Mr. Fell?
Can we grant them a conditional use permit to build a house there?
No. There's because in the CRE zone, residential is not allowed at all. So we can't add in the provision to just make it a conditional use, because that's not allowed in any way.
One more.
Yeah.
The sanitary sewer is at the corner of Perkins and Cooks Lane?
Yes.
So are all the surrounding properties already under an annexation agreement?
No, they're not. I'm not. Jeff, do you know if any of the other properties are?
I don't believe so.
I think it's because most of if not all of the other properties that have homes on them have had them. Those homes have been there for a while. This property just there hasn't been a home on it for a long time. So if those other homes were developed before the city boundary extended that far out, or the sewer extended that far out, then they wouldn't, we can't go back to them now and say we need an annexation agreement. Or it could have also been before the sanitary district and the city entered into this agreement where where a new connection permit requires an annexation agreement. So I think the other properties were all just developed some time ago.
Any mistake?
Does this mean that conservation recreation will not be there? Will not be in this area then?
I think some of the county land around there, a lot of that is CRE as well.
Yeah, the
And
county.
It's a mix of that and ag.
Yeah, all of the surrounding area is. If you look at exhibit. Wait, no, that's. Sorry, we don't actually have electronic versions of the county zoning, but basically.
That's city CRE right there.
Basically,
Park
the whole swath going like from the property a little bit west and then all northeast is all county conservation recreation.
So you're going to change it, right? You're not going to be conservation reservation.
Well, the issue we have is that our conservation recreation education zone does not allow the same things that the county conservation recreation allows. And in this case, the big one is that our zone doesn't allow residential uses. So all of the, I don't have the sheet in front of me that says what all is allowed in the county conservation recreation, but it does allow homes and it does allow agricultural uses. So in terms of converting to something that we currently have in the zoning ordinance, agriculture is really the only one that, or is the closest thing to, I think, to the uses allowed in the conservation recreation county zone.
Technically, it will still be county conservation recreation until it comes into the city, if it ever comes into the city. So it'll stay county CR until we reach out and it becomes contiguous.
Any further questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you.
Let me just quickly reiterate the procedures for a public hearing. The staff has presented their summary of the case. Petitioner may now address us and outline the nature of the request and present evidence. Other proponents of the request may be heard. Opponents of the request may speak to the commission. They can ask questions of the petitioners, and I will relay them to the petitioners. Other people may be heard. City staff may be asked for further clarification. The petitioner may then issue rebuttal and present, but cannot introduce new evidence, and the petitioner may then summarize his case. I'll then close the public input, and we'll discuss the case and possibly vote on the case. So if the petitioners would like to address the Plan Commission, please step forward and state your name for the record.
I'm Teresa Westenhaver, now Whitlatch, because I got married a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
I'm Harold Whitlatch.
congratulations. Thank you. So if you'd just like to outline the nature of the request, and then we can get into some of the questions that were
Okay.
kind of being raised.
So we bought this property because we wanted to have a rural property to build a house on, to do some husbandry, animals, maybe horses, peacocks for sure. And there's a pond on it. But there's also acreage on here that's been farmed for hay and things like that. And we may want to do that too, because we do have an area, this front property that's on Perkins Road actually has the electrical lines over it. So there's a big piece of that that's not going to be buildable. Not that we want to build, but so when we looked at this is county zoned, and I may have the letters wrong, but it's CR, and it's got all those things in it. You can do agriculture, you can do animals, you can build your house, have your pond, all those kinds of things. And then that was what we wanted to do, because we're both outdoors people, and we have a lot of animals, and we like animals. So, well, whenever we started to build the house, we came upon the sewer issue. And so we sat down with Kevin and Jeff, and I don't remember the lady's name. Libby. And we looked at things, and the residential just doesn't fit because it doesn't give us the opportunities to do this. The CRE for the county over to what your conservation is really about land management, the way I read it, preserving waterways and things like that, and there's no single-family homes to be built on it. So the residential didn't fit, and the agriculture, when we went down all the things on the list that was under the county zoning, most fit under the city zoning for that. So we could use both the county, own it as the county, and still do the things we want to do, and then if it gets annexed, it'll still fit. And that's our meetings, and that's pretty much where we ended up at. Can I add anything? No?
You did fine.
Thank you for that. If you don't have anything further, I'll ask if any commissioners have questions for the petitioner. Bernadine, you were wanting to flesh out the uses that they're planning. Was that explanation satisfactory?
How many animals are you going to have?
I don't know, because some of them will be small animals. We may have quite a few. I mean, we can't do like a hog farm because you don't have enough footage space in the buildings to do those kind of things. So, I mean, there is restrictions on that. So, I mean, I don't know.
How close are you to other?
Well, everybody there in that very area is like 5 acres or more in that area. I mean, there's people there who have animals on that very side of the road, so, and all across the road too.
I'd say 150 yards, probably the closest person.
Yeah.
And it's a mobile home setting across the road. But as far as animals, I mean, amount, you know, peacocks, a few of those, half a dozen at the most, a few chickens maybe. And seeing as how I'm getting a little older and getting out of the point of wanting to do a whole lot of work because I'm retired and I just do part-time work, I can raise 25 or 30 rabbits in a rabbit run if I want and sell the meat. Am I planning on putting cows and everything else out there? No, I don't want to do that much work.
But the point is, I mean, we'd be underneath the restrictions of what the agriculture is. I mean, you can't, there's certain things you wouldn't be able to do anyway. So,
I just want to live there and have fun.
I see, okay.
yes, sir.
Mr. Feld?
Am I correct in assuming you bought this piece of property, assuming you could build a house on it without connecting to the sanitary sewer? And if you had your choice, that would still be the case? Okay.
That was an unknown
Well,
in my,
it's not really conducive right there to a
sewer.
sewer. No, I'm
I
not.
mean, septic.
Septic, yeah.
Chuck Pridemore, which is a site superintendent for Riley Homes, is putting a home in for us. He says this is just some high ground. Everything else is really low around there. Lake on one side, and then it comes up, and there's a hill, and it goes back down into bottom ground.
Did he look at putting a multi-flow system in?
Not really interested
Okay.
in that. I like the city sewer.
Okay.
I don't mind.
But
you know,
not when we
it's something
started, we didn't know
You're gonna
that.
build and I'm gonna pay for and you own, so that's fine, but I'd like to have city sewer in there. It's a lot better for us.
And since it's so close, I think that's the other thing.
I just don't have much choice, really. It's fine.
I do want to ask city staff, is that requirement that they have to annex in a contractual thing, or is it in the ordinance?
It's an agreement, intergovernmental agreement
Yeah.
with the sanitary district.
And are there any exception or waiver procedures built into that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I'd rather have the sanitary.
Well, the fact that you have to connect to the sanitary is different.
It's, can we
But
go
related.
around,
It's different but related. you know,
around the
yeah.
annexation?
You can still have to
zoning?
connect to the sanitary, and it sounds like there may not be a way around it, but, you know. Mr. Hopkins, are you reaching for your button?
At some point, we have to deliberate, but before we do that, this is maybe the opportunity to talk with the applicants. I'm trying to think of a way to accomplish this that works for the city and works for you. And it seems to me we may have an opportunity here to write into the annexation agreement what we might think of as a draft for a rural residential category to add to our zoning ordinance. And it seems to me we could do this, maybe not instantly tonight, but relatively easily, by taking the ag district and specifying the permitted uses in that district that will not be permitted on this parcel because of, that is, through the mechanism of the annexation agreement, which goes with the deed, if I'm not mistaken, and therefore applies to future owners, whatever. That is, it gets around the question of sort of what we expect from current owners and what would be a long-term zoning agreement. And it's my understanding that the chickens and maybe the peacocks are already permitted in R1 in the city of Urbana.
What I understand, chickens are only hens.
Oh,
They have a rooster.
oh, okay. All right. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to start out
Somebody
by,
right back
with
there's
you
got one.
still at the microphone.
It's-
Because-
One of the things is, though, I don't want this annexation agreement to be, you can do this, you can't do this, you can do this. I'd like to be able to be zoned like anybody else was zoning and have the same restrictions as anybody else with that zoning. And if nobody else has this zoning, I don't want to be the first one and have to wait for this process.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if I look at the permitted uses, it includes, and by granting this zoning, it might not matter to you, but within the next 20 years, you might not be the owners of the property. It includes commercial breeding facility, farm equipment sales and service, plant nursery or greenhouse, driving range, miniature golf course, riding stable.
And that's
And-
currently how it's zoned in the county anyway.
No, I understand that, but what I'm looking for is a way that we can create a category that fits what the freedom to do a wide range of things that you can do in a 5-acre parcel.
If you wanted to rewrite that, and the list you just give us, what would you like to take out of there?
Well, I'm not sure, that's why I said I'm not sure I can do it
Yeah.
right away tonight. But I think I'd like to take out commercial breeding facility,
I understand.
but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because
Driving range?
you could, yeah, but you
Oh,
could
yeah,
want to
you-
breed rabbits, and
Yeah.
somebody could argue that if you sold rabbits, or you were breeding rabbits and selling meat, that constituted a commercial breeding facility. So that's why I think it's not, and I think as you're recognizing, it's not really easy to write something.
So my
like
question
this.
to you is, at any time in the future, if you wanted to rezone this area, you could go ahead and do that anyway. Is that
Not
if-
so easily.
I mean, you change from one zoning to another
But-
over time.
No, I think this is an example that generally it only happens if there's some kind of trigger.
Right.
And here we have this complex trigger of an annexation agreement imposed on us by
Right.
on an agreement with the sanitary district.
So why do you have a problem with the agriculture? If you have that zoning and it fits this property and it's a almost mirror image to the CRE zoning it already has, why do you have a problem with that?
I think because the way the city ag district categories are written right now is not quite intended for this circumstance. It may be that it's what we can do. And that's why this
Yeah.
is not really deliberation. I'm trying to think out loud a bit so that you can
Yeah.
help me think.
Anything else resembling a question for the, Mr. Fell?
This may be partially for staff too, but if you're gonna connect to the sanitary sewer that's way down at the corner about 500 feet from your house, are you
It's
paying for
not.
that?
No, it's not 500 feet.
Yeah.
Our property line's 184 feet from the sanitary.
I know, but apparently the closest sanitary connection is at the corner of Perkins and Cook's Lane.
Right, and the house is going up on Cook's Lane by the pond. So it's really
I know,
about,
but you gotta run your sanitary sewer all the way to Perkins, correct?
yep.
Do you pay for that? Or is the sanitary district building a new sewer up Cook's Lane, so now all the properties north of that are now gonna be within 200 feet of the sanitary connection?
The way it works is, at the beginning, the applicants would pay for it, but if it were to get expanded to future people in that area, they could get some funds recaptured.
So does it become the sanitary district sewer, or is it still a personal
Yes.
sewer?
It's the sanitary districts.
So now if somebody wants to build a house on the next piece of property north, we gotta enter an annexation agreement with them also.
Correct.
And anybody that wants to build something on the other side of Cook's Lane, we have to do the same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll just point out that I was contacted by two of the property owners that that we sent the notice out to, and both of those property owners were very much in favor of the sanitary sewer being extended, because they said that area, that the Cook's Lane is really not a good spot for having septic systems.
So we get to pay for it, but you own it.
Not us.
Sanitary.
Yeah, right, somebody, not you, yeah.
They can pay for a truck and I can drive it.
Yeah, right. Ms. Bynum?
So for the other properties that, if the sewer was extended, for the other properties that would be near it, would they have to pay if they wanted to hook into that system as well?
Yes, there would be some recapture, which the applicants would be able to recoup some of their money. But the other properties would have to pay to extend further.
And they would pay the sanitary district? Or who
Well, they would pay for the installation.
Oh, okay.
Any further questions? All right, well, thank you very much. We'll close, well, I'll ask if anybody else wants to address this. I don't think there will be, but in that case, we'll let you take your seat and we'll try to hack through some of this stuff and hopefully come up with a good solution.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, discussion. So, Mr. Hopkins, you were, I think, pursuing something that might be workable? If we can't get a waiver from the intergovernmental agreement, and I personally want them to own this property and enjoy it, you know,
I have a question.
I'll go, well, never mind, go ahead.
Mr. Otto.
Why would we want a waiver from the intergovernmental agreement? This is a good thing. We want annexation agreements. We want over time for these properties around the fringe. We hope Urbana grows out to them and they become a part of the city. It's good for them to be hooked into sanitary and water. And
I agree with that.
I think I'm of the opinion that, I mean, as I hear more, this is the closest analog to the current zoning. And I think we as a city might want to look at some of the characteristics of the current ag designation, because I spent a week within 100 yards of a mink breeding farm on the shore of Lake Michigan, which was on about 2 acres, and it was unpleasant.
Yeah, I
So
get you.
the commercial breeding
That's right.
category,
Yeah.
so the solution is to go back and look at the allowed uses to tighten
which is-
that up. But I don't think, I think this is a pretty clean thing, as I understand it now more. We want the pre-annexation agreement. We hope the city eventually comes out there and that they become a part of the city and we get some tax revenue. And the other homes as well, that's a good thing. I don't see where there's much risk to the city, but I think next time we look at zoning categories, we might want to look at whether within city limits or within city zoning, we want any sort of broad category called commercial. I mean, it could be a kennel. You could have somebody there with 50 breeding pairs of dogs. But for right now, it looks to me, my answers have pretty much been addressed, I think.
Okay. Mr. Feld?
With all respect to the petitioner, I take exception a little bit to Mr. Otto's comments, because I think there are people that live in this area specifically because they don't want to be within the city limits, and we're kind of spider webbing a little sewer up that's going to force all these people to be annexed in that don't want to be annexed in. They live there because they don't want to live within the city limits. To me, the most appropriate thing to do, and I don't know how we do it, is to rezone this in some way and maybe we can't do it, that allows them to build a house without having to be without an annexation agreement.
Well,
I-
did I say one?
Absolutely.
I like animals, and I like being on the farm, but I was wondering whether that's a place close to other people who might, as you were saying, wouldn't like to be near the, what somebody's doing, because it's a residential area, supposedly for people. And I was just worrying, are we going to continue to have people come there if we've got places where there are lots of animals that maybe aren't as nice as others? I like horses, I like cows, I like all kinds of animals, but I'm just thinking is where it's good for all the people who live there.
Any further discussion? We've got, I think, a proposal to either, we have a comment?
Well,
Ms.
yeah,
Bynum?
yeah, I kind of have a question. So if Mr. Garcia, right? Mr. Garcia said that a couple people contacted him about possibly wanting to connect with the sewer. So if they wanted to do that, would they also have to enter into an annexation agreement?
Well, I'll just clarify. What the two people that contacted me were, I guess they were concerned that they would have been concerned if if the property were not required to connect to the sanitary sewer. So they were concerned that they would have neighbors that would be using septic systems. They themselves were not. They didn't express desire to connect to the sewer as well. I think one of them might already be connected to the sewer anyway, but I just wanted to clarify what I was saying.
Okay, so they're not, well, you said one of them might be connected to the sewer.
I think one of them was connected to the sewer already, but the point is that both people that contacted me were, I think they were excited at the possibility of sanitary sewer going north up Cooks Lane, because they said the area is really not suited for septic systems, so they didn't want to see more septic systems in the area.
Anything further?
I have kind of a
Mr.
follow-up.
Bell.
What prompts, for instance, we'll take the parcel we're talking about. What prompts an annexation agreement? A building permit? If they wanted to build a garage there, would they do they have to have an annexation agreement for that also? A barn?
No, it would just be, it's the connection to the sewer that prompts the annexation agreement.
Okay.
Mr. Otto?
I mean, as I recall, the background to this agreement between the two cities and the sanitary district was they had a problem with developers planting subdivisions not contiguous to the city and then paying to hook into the sanitary district. And so they're actually using all of the benefits of the metropolis, but they're not paying the taxes. And so the cities came to the sanitary district and said, we want you to stop hooking up people who are trying to not pay their fair share of library and all of these other things. So that's the purpose of the requirement. And so you can avoid triggering it by not having anything on the property that requires sanitary, but as soon as you want to build a home, you have to have the pre-annexation agreement. And I think it's a good thing because we've got this problem with still some existing subdivisions around where they're hooked into the sanitary system. They want all of the amenities of the city, but they don't want to pay their fair share of the cost of running the cities.
Mr. Bell?
I can't disagree with that, but I honestly don't understand why they can't be allowed to build a house and put in a septic system and not connect to the sanitary sewer and this whole issue just goes away.
It's a state requirement that's also in our subdivision and land development code. So,
All right.
Ms. Bynum?
I think I'm more inclined to agree with Mr. Otto because it seems like it already fits what the what our comprehensive plan says for the area with the rural, residential areas. And it, if it was hooked up to the sewer system, because they were saying that that area isn't really set up for a septic system, so that might be more sanitary and might help with the property value in that area too.
Well, I'm trying to listen to you and come up with options. So our options are, that doesn't sound like, or maybe, might not even be a good idea to try to seek any kind of, we can't get out of they have to connect to the sanitary district line. Probably may not be a good idea, or we can't get out of the related intergovernmental agreement provision that once they connect to the sanitary, they have to annex. So we're stuck with the decision tonight of either accepting the request or doing as Mr. Hopkins suggested and accepting the request with some language in the annexation agreement that takes some of the uses out or limits some of the uses that are currently available in the ag district. Some of which are Mr. Hopkins had alluded to. They're not going to put it in a golf course or driving range, but I suppose somebody might want to at some point. Same goes with commercial breeding, some of those things, but that sounds to me like our choices.
And we would have to make the changes for the agricultural district tonight, or?
I don't think we're in a position to change the agricultural zoning district tonight or to create a new zoning district called rural residential that would sort of be more desirable for an urban sort of rural with some agricultural uses in it, but which you could put a home on. Right now, our CRE doesn't allow people to do anything except for and it's really meant for, quasi-public uses. So you can't build a house, you can't have a business, you can't do anything. You can't farm, you can't, So it's out. Residential one, it's close. It depends on how the big garden, small farm thing, or, what kind of animals can you have and things of that nature. It would be more limited than what they can do in the ag. And it sounds like they want to do more in the ag than they can do in the R1. So right now, with what we've got, ag is the most appropriate to their desires and their the way they want to use the property. I think some of the concerns are some of the uses that are allowed by ag might not be compatible with a residential use.
So could we modify that after tonight then, later?
I think that's what Mr. Otto was suggesting. We come back at some later time and either modify the ag or create a new zoning category. Let's call it rural residential, that is friendlier than county CRE, which is meant for the county. That's friendlier to the residential uses that this would butt up against. I don't know. Those sounds like those are our options.
I like that. So we wait.
So, a question for staff. In what sense is the annexation agreement actually before us? We don't actually have any, it's on our case list, but we don't actually have the annexation agreement, do we, or do we?
You do. So the reason that it's come to Plan Commission is because it contains the rezoning, but now that it has come to you, you can act on the rezoning and suggest changes to the agreement itself.
But we're suggesting those changes to the agreement to be negotiated between city council or city, who actually negotiates the annexation agreement?
It's staff that does the negotiations, and then hopefully come up with something that city council can accept.
But it can go directly to city council if there's no zoning change.
Correct.
Yeah,
But if we annex them in, we have to zone it as something, correct?
yes, oh, I understand.
Mr. Otto?
I've got a problem with dragging this out. They apparently have a builder. They are willing to pay the expense of hooking in. They're willing to have the annexation agreement. Oftentimes, you have people dragging their feet. They want to do something without any. They're willing to do what the city has asked them according to code. Now, in the last year, we went through the complete code and tried to clean up things, and we didn't clean this one up. So that we didn't do that should not delay them from proceeding with their plans. Their request is legitimate within current code. We're seeing some problems with the code, but I don't see how we can tell them, specifically since they're not announcing plans to put in a mink farm. We've got time to go back and look at the definitions of commercial breeding and clean that
Yeah, I
up.
tried to find some of those and I couldn't, but.
But I really, and I think to go into the annexation agreement when they have asked for a legitimate zoning that we already have, they're willing to live by it. I would be hard pressed to say that we don't just sort of do a clean approval and then instruct staff to come back to us with some help on this zoning category.
Mr. Hopkins, any further thoughts by anybody on that? Well, somebody can move it if you're ready. We can discuss further after.
I move that, you know how to do this language. I move that we approve the staff recommendation.
It's Plan Case 2014A06 and 2245M14 before the City Council with a recommendation for approval. Is that what you said?
Second,
Seconded by Mr. Hopkins. Mr. Fell?
Before we vote, can I make a statement?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to vote against the annexation agreement, not on the basis that I don't, that I disagree with anything the petitioner wants to do, because I think what you want to do is fine, and I'm all for that. I'm voting against it because I know that there are people in this area that don't want to have the city boundary extend into where they are. And they live there specifically because of that. And the fact that the sanitary sewer is going to now proceed up Cook's Lane and force these people to enter into additional annexation agreements is not right, in my opinion.
It's my understanding that the existing landowners won't have to do that. It's some new property.
If they want to hook into the sanitary
If they
sewer, they
wanna
have
hook-
to.
yeah.
And so anybody that wants to build a house that's within,
New, yeah, sure, new.
has to,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's right.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. Any further discussion? Otherwise, I think we're ready for a roll call. Excuse me, I think we're getting ready to vote. You did, but nobody stepped up to oppose you. I think it's going to be all right.
Ms. Bindum?
Yes.
No, wait just a second. So you moved them both at once. I would like for us, actually, given what Mr. Fell said, I would like to vote on them separately. So first vote will be on Plan Case Number 2014A06. This is the annexation agreement.
That's not exactly the motion I made.
Okay, well, I could be overruled, you know.
I mean, if this motion fails, one could come back
Okay,
and split it. but-
okay, fair enough.
Okay, so just to clarify, what are we going to vote on?
Well, right now, the chair's botching this meeting, but Mr. Otto corrected me that he moved them both, so we're going to vote on them both as a package.
Can I agree with the chair that we separate the cases? Does that have any weight?
Don't
in
we
how
have to
we
vote on that too?
You can ask if you can amend the motion.
Can I amend the motion?
It's up to Mr. Otto.
I think the chair can decide, can take amendments.
Well, I move, or whatever the language is, that we vote on the cases separately.
Second.
All right. Does anybody have a problem if we vote on a case separate?
Okay, so I have another question now.
Discuss an amendment, but the problem I'm running into is that I think Mr. Fell has an objection to decisions that were made beyond our control, and essentially he's saying, I'm going to deny them the right to do what they want to do, which is according to the law and according to the agreements. I'm going to vote against that, even though I think it's a good idea because of the effect it might have on other people. That's theoretical in the sense that if they don't want to build, I mean, if they're not in that area, it's,
Isn't it the same reason we vote on rezoning parcels? It might affect somebody else besides the petitioner also. But
but if we vote yes on one and no on the other, we're telling them you can't do what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to rule the amendment out of order consistent with the original motion. So we'll vote on them both at the same time. Sorry, Mr. Fell. Ms. Binder.
Okay, again, just to clarify, so we can't get away from the annexation like you were saying. That's the law, right? And that's based on the intergovernmental agreement that we have. So it's kind of moot, so we have to do that, correct?
We don't have to approve it, you know, because we may have some objection to that. That's the fact that they have to seek it doesn't mean that we have to approve it. So you
Okay.
can vote any way you want on this.
And for the current owners in that area, if the sewer is extended, they don't have to hook up to the sewer if they don't want to, and they don't have to be annexed into the city. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
New
But new people
construction,
do?
Sure.
Okay, but not the current owners there.
If they, I suppose if they opted to connect to the sewers, that then they would have to annex.
Yeah, but that would be their choice, too, if they
Correct,
wanted
but
to.
to Mr. Fell's point, you might box in somebody who doesn't want to be annexed. So you could conceivably jump over a property and require an annexation on the other side of it.
And then they would be forced to annex into?
They would not be.
Okay.
They
Okay.
would be surrounded by the city, essentially. Okay, are we ready to vote? All right, if we could have a roll call.
Ms. Bindem?
Yes.
Mr. Fell?
no.
Mr. Fitch?
Yes?
Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Ms. Stake?
No.
That motion passes 4-2 before the city council with a recommendation for approval. And Mr. Ingstrom, when will that be here?
December 1st.
December 1st.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
I don't see why we can't wait just one more meeting.
Is it appropriate to ask Mr. Engstrom to come back to us at a future meeting with some background information on the zoning category and ways we might review that?
Sure, that is appropriate.
Does the chair have to ask him for those things, or can a plebeian?
I don't know, the chair's, you know, it's anybody's guess at this point. We'll address that during the staff report. I think we can definitely ask for that. I think it's a good idea. All right, now, recommencing with the agenda, we're going to pick up item number 6, old business, which is the review of the Plan Commission's bylaws. We had received a communication that I highlighted earlier from Ms. McCusick. I think I'll just ask city staff, there's been a slight change to the wording of the proposal. So if you could just walk us through that, please.
Yes, sir. We also were able to discuss with the legal division some of the questions that Plan Commission had at our last meeting. So I wanted to share those answers with you. The first question was whether or not the chair can direct questions to the petitioner instead of having the opponents ask questions directly. And the city attorney has answered that yes, the chair, we can write it into the bylaws that the chair could direct those questions. He warned that it could become cumbersome if the questions aren't relayed word for word. There might be some back and forth with the opponent coming back to have the chair reword the question, but it's entirely possible, he said. Another question the commission had was who decides if the opponent's questions are relevant? Mr. Simon.
What number is that?
I'm sorry?
What number is that?
That was one of the underscored, it is
That's under Article
5.5. 5.5, and it's one of the sections that was added. So it's on
think
page
it's,
4. It's on the bottom of
okay.
page 4.
Page 4.
It's actually Article 6.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, topics germane to those on the agenda.
Oh, that one, yes.
Is that the one you're talking about?
Actually, I'm talking about Article 6, paragraph 6.
Paragraph
Okay.
6.
It's opponents may ask relevant questions of the petitioner as amended here.
Oh, I see.
So,
Sure.
yep. So Mr. Simon clarified that the chair is the one to decide if the questions are relevant or not.
Okay.
There was a question about if the petitioners or opponents or anyone before the commission is legally bound to answer questions. The answer is no. But the city attorney thinks that it would speak to the credibility of the person if they refuse to answer. And then Mr. Trail, I think, had a question, or maybe it was Mr. Hopkins, about what the latitude the commission has for changing these rules, and if there are a state statute or other state laws that spell out required rules for public hearings. And it turns out there are not state laws that spell them out. It's entirely up to the city and to the commission to make up their own rules. But we did research through the other bylaws for other boards, and for boards that have public hearings, they are mostly very similar to what is laid out in this order of operations. So to update you on the changes, we presented a set of updated bylaws at the previous meeting, and we added a couple additional things which are highlighted on the bylaws that were handed out and in the packet on our website. The first one was Article 5, number 5. The second paragraph, adding a sentence, in the interest of ensuring public input in the case of limited time, the chairperson shall also have the authority to reduce the time limit to 3 minutes or a shorter time agreed upon by the members of the commission, and may limit input to topics germane to those described on the agenda. No member of the commission is obligated to respond to any public input provided. And then under Article 6, number 6, we discussed earlier, opponents may ask relevant questions of the petitioner by submitting questions to the Plan Commission, either in writing or during oral testimony. The chairperson may direct the petitioner to answer such questions during rebuttal. And then there was under number 12, there was a typo that we caught to insert a space between any and time. There's a typo on page 4.
Right. I was.
In the interest of ensuring public input in, we have got wait a minute.
Yeah, you're right. There's something wrong there.
In the interest of ensuring
So the of is between case and limited.
Yeah.
And again, the commission cannot vote to approve these additional changes until the next meeting.
At the earliest, correct.
Yes, at the earliest.
So, do you have any questions for city staff? If not, we'll do public input and then further discussion. Any questions, Mr. Engstrom? So I do have one. With the point that you just made about the who decides what's relevant, 6.6, does that mean that you need to clarify in that the chair decides what's relevant, using much the same language that we used up here, that the chairperson has the authority to reduce the time and may limit input to topics germane?
It was not the city attorney's opinion that we need to clarify that.
So we're okay
Yep.
on that? Okay. Just clarifying the clarification. So, okay, well, in that case, if anybody wants to, does anyone want to address the Plan Commission? Ms. McCusick, if you could state your name for the record, that would be great.
Carol McCusick, 1907 North Cunningham. About bylaws in general, it seems like it's really a problem not to go by rules. I mean, you make rules for people in the city, and not going by them, how can you get really interested in changing them? There's, I think, a good, now the thing you got from, it's marked, okay, I guess if there's like muddiness during the hearings about the, how Robert's Rules of Orders from the current bylaws apply, in the discussion about the bylaws, there is not that muddiness. And I think that's a good thing, because it would be very good for you to get better democracy, better records through trying to get electronic meetings that can do Roberts. I think that's would be desirable. I guess you got that drift from what I tried to design, and I'm still working on it, I'd like to say. You can't even, for making a proposal, let's say I have a copy of the current bylaws that's a PDF, I don't predictably find I get, this PDF you see up there, and the is it called a menu? The icon bar, the one that's immediately above the PDF, has sticky notes and highlighting over toward the right, like the second and third from the far right icon. So that's a way, like a person could mark on a PDF of the bylaws and bring it on their flash drive to talk about it. Now, I do understand that the bylaws belong to you, the commissioners. They don't. That I'm just, trying to share something you might or might not want to pick up from me. Okay, I think it would be, so I've heard from a couple people from, I think Lou Hopkins and David Trail both said they perceive the difference between how they operate and what's written in the bylaws, and are thinking they'll make the they'll make the written law conform with their practice. But I think maybe you should practice the law first. I guess I already said that. So right now, like the salient thing seems to be, or one of them seems to be that right now you do not have bylaws that say that the chair gets to, that gets to deliver the questions of the person sitting here to the petitioner, of the opponent to the petitioner. That doesn't exist under the current bylaws, but the chair reads rules, okay, that he says, I think I said that last week, that if the lawyer interpreted your bylaws as meaning that the chair should take the question of the opponent and give it to the petitioner or deliver it to the petitioner, I don't hear that you've got have that kind of agreement amongst you that exists in the current bylaws. And they were saying that it's up to you to decide what you meant by your own bylaws. And if there's an interpretation problem, you should, I guess, take a vote on that, whether it's right for the chair, not because you need to go to the lawyer for that, I think. That was what that point was. So I don't like that there isn't electronic meetings because you can't really create your own copy. You in the meeting can't create your own copy, and you don't have a record directly from the meeting. You have to send it for Jeff to work on, and people. So I think it's hard to say what it is that you pass and everything. So on the public comment, but if I skip on to, assuming you could, that this set of bylaws was marked up on the dimension of, on just the dimension that was presented. Okay, I don't know if I should. I'd be mashing together, which is my objection, really. I thought that, okay, whatever was presented to November 6th, you should, in the meeting November 6th, mark that up, and then that should go for another week by itself on the bylaws, because it might without being combined with with a whole different part of the bylaws, which is unrelated, really, that's in the hearing process, that's this question of the chair giving the questions to the petitioner from the opponent. Yeah, I don't think I'll say anything more on the bylaws. I wanted to, like how you could not have, well, okay. Yeah, you need to get the input, I guess, on these. They're all prepared. So here's a statement from these proposed bylaws. It's from, and it is from the provision 6 in Article 6, procedure for hearings. The sentence, "The chairperson may direct the petitioner to answer such questions during rebuttal." So if you mean to say that you can't count on anything, I think you've said it. I mean, as an opponent, I can't count on, even if I wrote up my question, I couldn't count on the question being delivered to the petitioner anytime during the hearing. That's what that says to me, if you want to know how it seems. If I was trying to use the process, I would write down my question, and I'd say it out loud as I handed the card to the chair. And I'd want to be an opponent, not another, because the other people don't have rebuttal in the, so that's on the public comment. I think what you got, okay, I'm switching to the other issue that's also to the, now this would be, of course, it's a very legitimate to have an interest in public comment as a public commenter. So, even though it's Plan Commission bylaws, so I'll say that I think it's very important to know what was the impetus for the attorney asking you to work on your public comment rule, because you don't know whether you're, or I guess Jeff can tell us whether he looked at what you did so far and it was satisfying whatever demands, why ever he asked you to work on it. I'm kind of guessing that it's because of the language in the Open Meetings Act that says that every public body is supposed to have their own rules recorded. But that's part of the background for it, I think, because it's like breaking up the standard. It's like doing something unusual compared to what's in the bylaws, which is that you were going to do, from Article 4 meetings. Number 7, the Plan Commission shall review the Plan Commission bylaws at least once annually at a regular meeting the chairperson designates. Probably if you start a review period and you send the work to the staff and you got to the end of the year, don't you think that annual review period would end because the year ended? So probably the one that started in March of 2013 ended at the end of 2013 just because you ran out of the year. And this on the agendas recently, last week, what was it, tonight, it said, it was calling it an update. But it's sort of getting stretched into being the review because you also started dealing not just with what's the difference between an update and a review?
Semantics.
One thing about the public comment is
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up here pretty quick so that we can start to deliberate and talk about some of the points you've made, and I think some commissioners may have some other points.
Mm-hmm. the public comment is not, like, in city council, okay, they have public comment at the beginning, essentially, of the meetings. And there, they don't make available their draft minutes. Here, you have the benefit of the draft minutes, and you could say something to correct them. They become the record, official record of the body, but you have the public comment in the order of business way towards the end. Also, the chairs, it seems like the chairs, way the chair operates with regard to public comment, it's good for that to be like real elaborated, because it wouldn't be anything that is in Robert's Rules of Order. It's like a special thing. So you have, it would be a good thing to spell everything out there. Should I stop there?
Yeah, I think that would be good. We've got your written materials, and we've heard your testimony a couple of times, and we can't vote tonight, so you'll have a chance to come back again. And so we'll see if there's anything else that we want to do to the bylaws at this time. Mr. Hopkins?
I'm tempted to suggest that we have a study session on the bylaws. I think there are still problems. Some of them minor, some of them potentially significant. And so, having raised that possibility, let me run through some of them, and then you can react to whether they're how we want to deal with them. I'm going to skip the ones that are essentially editorial. In Article 6, procedure for hearings, I think it would be valuable to split this into two subsections, because I think there are two quite distinct things going on here which get confused. 1 through 11, as I understand it, presents a sequential order of procedure for a public hearing. 12 through 18 are aspects of general application to public hearings that apply to all of the first 11 or to some of them. And it's somewhat difficult to cross-reference or understand that. So as an example, 12, the first of what I think of as the second set, says questions from the commission may be directed at any time to the applicant, staff, or public to clarify evidence in the hearing. And I think what that means is during steps 1 through 11. But part of the reason I'm confused is if you go to item 18, it says the chairperson shall close the public hearing only after the Plan Commission has taken action on the case. And then it says the public hearing may be reopened at the same meeting prior to the commission's action on the request.
Yeah, that was a
Now,
little
I
confused
don't
about that.
see how those two statements are possible.
Yeah.
And I think what it actually means is close the public input, not the public hearing. And that the public input can be reopened. But that suggests to me that we don't have in our first part of this.
So you would essentially break out the second sentence into its own point.
What?
Is it
The second sentence of what?
of 18?
No. I think 18 makes no sense. What it says is mutually contradictory.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So
So do you want to strike the whole thing, or?
no,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm, if I go back to my preface, what I'm arguing is I think there are significant problems with this, and I think we need a study session where we
Just
can
to hack through it. yeah.
sit and work at it, rather than treat it as something that needs a few tweaks and, we can get them and work. So part of what I then would go on to say is I think after step 11, we don't say specifically how we deliberate. And we close the public input, we deliberate, we can reopen the public input under the procedures of 18, but it says public hearing, and it doesn't mean that. And then there's some other things. The commission should not be bound by strict rules of evidence. I think that applies to deliberation, whereas the chairperson shall rule on questions relating to the admissibility of evidence relates to public input, I believe. Part of my
I
point is,
think that's right.
I'm not sure.
Well, who made
It-
up these?
Pardon?
Who did
I don't
this?
know the answer to
Well,
that.
we, meaning the commission, over the
Years
last
ago, yeah.
many years, has
Oh, I see.
created them and modified them.
And
And then-
modified them.
So another example, which to me may be one of the most substantive, is that under 7.3, motions shall include explicitly or by reference the findings of fact and shall state explicitly or by reference the reason for the findings of the commission. Now, I don't have to use only tonight's
Oh,
case
Mr. Otto did all
to
of that.
suggest that since I have been on the
No, I
commission,
agree.
which is only 10 years, I don't think that's ever happened.
I've never done it.
And I also don't think we want to do that. I do think there are procedural expectations of the commission. My guess is that a way to deal with that is to make a statement in the bylaws that the staff recommendation findings are presumed to be the basis of a motion unless explicitly contradicted in the motion, which is in effect what we've been doing,
Mhm, mhm.
because the staff recommendations include this LaSalle criteria. But we never agree on findings of fact as a commission. I mean, we never
Not
we
explicitly.
never do that. So it seems to me that, we need to change that, and that goes to this question of either we need to change our practices to fit the rules, or we need to change the rules to fit our practices. And anyway, that's probably enough, but I'm not really ready to say we have something that we can vote on next time, because it just doesn't seem to be the case to me.
So, yeah. I'm wondering about the mechanics of the thing. We've got an open piece of business. Don't know if we need to continue it and have a study session, or if we could have a study session like session during, devote a meeting to it.
Right, I mean, it
yeah.
can be during a regular meeting.
Sure.
We've done that. We
Sure.
just did it recently.
Yeah.
But I guess, and I suppose we can do it now to a certain extent. I mean, we can behave like a study session and do a lot of discussion. But my point is, I'm not ready to focus on the red line strikeout in front of us as the solution to revising the bylaws.
Any thoughts about that? Yeah, I think it needs a lot more discussion. I agree with you. And I think you raised some great points. We probably need to just start at the top and go through line by line, not striking things out, but, discussing them, and hopefully we can move over the things that are editorial, as you mentioned, and hit some of the high points So, you want to, I'll ask city staff to put a study session regarding this on the next agenda and continue the old business to a meeting subsequent to the study session. And I think that that'll give us the breathing space we need to really look at this anew and come up with something that's procedural enough, but which also is flexible and makes sense for us.
So I got a question for you. The next meeting is December 4th. And the only agenda item we have is actually a study session to present. There's a class that did a project on a transit center for downtown Urbana. So would you like it on that agenda as well?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
I mean, the point is that we need to get these things reviewed and updated, and we're way overdue. And so, I know we have a lot of other business going on, but we really need to do this.
So maybe one thing we could do is have I guess I don't even know what technology we've got. What I'm trying to imagine is a Word document we can play with live,
That's
not in
Ms.
the sense
McCusick's
of,
suggestion, yeah.
right,
Yeah,
I understand.
yeah.
Not to edit the fine points that way, but just sort of to,
Enter comments and notes and
yeah,
such. Yeah.
as we go through. And that's the kind of rough, that's why I'm thinking of a study session kind of thing rather than,
Deliberation.
rather than prepared language.
That makes sense to me. If we can get a live copy and you can.
Presumably we can do that from there.
Exactly,
Yes, we
yeah,
can.
sure. You can pull you can do it in PDF, you can do it in Word, pull it right up, enter notes, and as we talk about them, and then depending on how that goes, either we come back to, you make some changes, and we come back and consider the specific changes, probably make further changes, or whatever has to happen, so. All right, well, let's consider the old business continued then, and unless anybody has something they want to add tonight on it, and we'll look forward to a study session on the bylaws on December 4th. We don't have any new business. Is there any audience participation tonight? Thank you, Ms. McCusick. I'll give you 5 minutes in this round.
Yeah, guess for the files for each thing, you'd probably want to have separate, and then that's what there's an extra paper for.
Are you talking about the issue you raised last time of what happens to communications that we get that are apart from the agenda and not connected to any agenda case? And Jeff
I
mentioned that those
wasn't-
are kept in paper files. Is that the context?
Well, as far as the sign-ins for the hearing, they would be part of the evidence for the hearing, or the record file for the hearing, so that would be a case.
Yeah, correct in that regard. But we also talked about things that come up in audience participation or communications that we get that aren't connected.
That was something I was noticing, that they aren't, positively identified by a couple sentences of description, so they you know, you could have something else attached to the minutes and say it was the thing you described. Okay, but what I was going to talk about was, I don't have the information about the bill about construction and demolition sites, but I think that it doesn't, I think that it shouldn't be a red herring that there's a second business, and that might or might not fall under new rules from the state that come out of the veto session. Because just the special use permit for the recycled asphalt shingle alone, whether they're staying up in the second higher lot or not, ought to be engineered broadly for poisonous things, because it is unlikely that the owner is going to be able to stop admixture in that. And
Well, Ms. Bukisik, you're getting into an area now that, as I've said before, we can't do anything about that. We've already ruled on the land use aspects of the case and the site plan. It's no longer a matter of Plan Commission concern what the EPA does, or the City Public Health Department, or whomever was going to regulate them. So we really can't do anything about your concerns.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a bridge, there was a it has to do like with the part of the, I wasn't at the October 9th meeting, but the part of the active choices plan that was adopted as an amendment to the comprehensive plan had a map that said there was a side path, a Lincoln Avenue side path. It was on Exhibit A to the staff memo on the first map. And so, was that on November? That wasn't October 9th. That was November 6th, I think, that you adopted that. That was just last time. So, if people, and also, yeah, I think I've already explained, I'm worried about the groundwater, and I think that why you just use any chance you have, and is that it doesn't seem like there's like a tracking the way there should be, where the oh man, so it would all be okay, tracking of the creation and abandonment of dumps. If the applications to various authorities are driven by the business person, then there isn't government oversight of a linear process with an initial intake, like at the government, where people have a grasp of the whole process. And how you would want to, like, you don't have the EPA here at the hearings, right? So if you hope the TV recording, the video recording is good, and the minutes, your minutes are checked well, because which I don't do. I can't say. I would like to make almost a blanket statement that I don't want to be assumed that I accept any of the minutes that because I haven't gotten up to checking, to marking them with these sticky notes. But like in a meeting, you could say, you could ask the recycled asphalt shingle guy what inspections he anticipates having from the, from
I'm
the.
going to have to ask you to wrap it up, Ms. McHugh.
Okay. And you would want to get an answer, like, that would be one of the cards I would give in new bylaws, some passed in the future. But it does disturb me that you haven't tried to go by the current bylaws while you still have them.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Staff report.
City Council has taken action on 3 items that Plan Commission has recently discussed. The electronic signs, to allow those in the CRE zoning district. That zoning ordinance amendment was approved. The long-range transportation plan for the county, the City Council passed a resolution of support for that. And the Greenways and Trails plan for the county was approved as an amendment to the comprehensive plan by City Council.
Great. Anything further?
With our condition or not?
Yes, with your condition.
Yes. Small improvement, but an improvement. Anything else, Mr. Engstrom?
No, sir.
We don't have a study session, but you wanted me to make the point that Mr. Otto, in fact, I'll let Mr. Otto could probably phrase it better than I can, that we want the city staff to look at alternatives to the ag zoning, whether the uses to the ag zoning are appropriate for an ag district, and whether there needs to be a separate zoning classification, something like rural residential, that has some components of ag and some components of a residential district.
We can study that.
And I'm interested in some of the definitions for some of the terminology.
Yeah, they were hard to find, I agree.
Right.
Commercial breeding was one I specifically looked for.
I would also like to have them think about residential. I think we're losing all our residential in this city.
Well,
Because
we'll try to
every
carve
time
out
somebody
something that
comes,
protects
we
it.
gotta give them something else, so we're not gonna have residential. And I want more people here.
We just approved building on a lot that's been trees up to now.
Yeah,
When do
yeah,
we do
but
that?
we don't know.
Well,
We
what we're-
don't know what's gonna happen there.
What we're
Because
going
we
to try to
don't
do
even
here,
have the
Bernadine, is to
information.
come
We
up
don't
with
even have the
a
information.
residential-friendly district.
What?
What we're going to try to do here is ask city staff to come up with a zoning type that's very friendly to residential, but
Well-
allows a wider freedom of uses. I think.
When I see it, I'll believe it, but it's been, not now. Every time.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
All right, good, well, thank
I
you.
gotta call my husband to get me.
We're
I
adjourned.
don't drive.